people can get in.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get started.
All right, guys. It's October 5th. Everyone here ready? We are going to cover the retrospective, triage, and smoke execution.
I'm sorry, Jim. The guys, they asked the link. They can't attend.
They can't
Let's try
attend.
again.
Oh, they don't see the link.
Okay, here's the link again. Does everybody have it now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right, guys. So again, just going over the class agenda today. We are looking at the retrospective meeting for 15 minutes. We are going to look at bugs and how we triage these bugs/defects and the difference and examples of severity and priority in testing. And hopefully we don't go over our coffee break. So we start at 11:10, so remind me to stop talking. And then we have our smoke execution, quick demonstration on that, and then we'll go over the homework assignment and then the Q&A. Good morning, everyone over there. Thank you. So we're going to go to the next one, and we are going to do our retrospective. Let me share the retrospective screen. Practice, is it? Okay. Does everybody see the retrospective board on the other side, Nick, Vahe? Okay. So who's the first victim? Who wants to give me what went well? Anyone in here? Where's my friend Anton?
I know, right?
He's always good at telling me what went well. Oksana, let me write that down. Oksana, can you type on the chat what went well in the Scrum meetings? Okay, very organized, helpful. Don't create that bug on that misspelling. Team work with mapping tool went great. Good morning, Zakia.
Regression test cases.
NATALY.
Thank you.
Did you guys like the lessons on the dev tools?
Oh yeah, it was very useful.
This is from Nick. Team leader, Irina. Wow, a lot went well this week. Very impressed from last week. We're doing some kind of progress, right? And checked by Sue is from Edwina. Okay, guys, thank you so much for the what went well contribution. I only have 6 that can fix the screen, and then I want to see what can be improved.
Can I say?
Sure, but a little bit speak up louder.
Okay. Can we have the clear scope of the homework on the homework channel? So everything, you know, to avoid a lot of questions, like in our channel, what is the homework? What is the homework, you know?
Okay.
Also, a more standardized way of checking homework. Again, going back to last week, if you remember, you were showing one way of doing things, like writing test cases. Also doesn't accept that and asks to fix it.
Okay.
She accepts it. So I'm not saying it's incorrect or she is wrong or anything, but if different instructors do things differently, at least let us also know so she accepts different ways of doing things.
Okay.
If they're all correct.
Marina said didn't attach it, yeah, but also didn't accept it if there is no.
I was
You guys always have to keep on thinking. You're like, what's right? What's right? What's right?
I was telling also, I was like, okay, Marina said I don't need to attach screenshots. I'm not going to attach screenshots.
Okay.
She accepted. She once told me, like, you need to be able to defend your point of view, like how you think.
Of course.
What you think is right.
Right.
So,
I agree.
but
And I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. I forgot.
Dennis, D-E-N-I-S.
There we go. I'll remember it now. I know that we have some more. One quick second. Nick, you raised your hand. I'll let you go ahead and speak up. Are you gonna, Nick? What's your contribution to what can be improved?
The homework, especially homework. And yeah, I raised my hand because I made a mistake on the what went well. So
That's your contribution? You want to contribute to that particular category, what went well?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a
dev tool and regression test, not redirection.
Got it. Okay, thanks so much, Nick.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Okay. How to access the retrospective, Elena, you had a comment on that. Elena, do you want access to retrospectives that were posted in previous classes? Yes, all the links are in the PowerPoint presentations. All the URLs and the links to what we're doing is in the presentation. You guys have access to the presentations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Roman communication. What do you mean? Do you have anything specific on communication as what can be improved? Roman, you're unmuted. Go ahead and contribute to the communication that you wanted.
Oh, right. Hi, everyone. The reason why I pointed out communication is because, at the last session on the last Saturday when when you told us about the homework, you said somebody was re-asking you, some girl asking, hey, can you point out more specific what's our homework? And you said, well, it's I think that was the application section on LMS, which was pretty clear, and I agree with you. But then the next session on Monday, Marina said, you guys are supposed to pick a case for regression cases, do all the test cases, and do the mind map. And she's like, wow, why didn't you guys do that? That was pretty straightforward. And I don't know, maybe somebody else figured that out by themselves, but for me, it wasn't really clear. So this is why I pretty much pointed out communication.
Awesome. Okay, we will work on that. All right, Roman, thank you for contributing. Okay, he's muted. Okay. There was one other comment, I believe Eric C., and that is true. When the question that Eric C. had is, isn't the whole idea of boards a place where we can post our thoughts confidentially? In the past, we were given a link to post on our own, and we used to get a hyperlink to the board. And that's very true, Eric. In your Scrum meeting, if you're at a company, sometimes they do it confidentially, sometimes they don't, just so they can address the issue right away. We're doing this as a learning experience. All of us, including the teachers, the students, everybody is learning of what can be improved, what went well. So for this particular point, we aren't going to do that whole confidentiality. Maybe later down the road in a few weeks or so, we'll do it confidentially. But for now, this is just a learning. It's a practice that we want to exercise so that we can get feedback right away as well. So I hope you understand that. And then, do you guys have any suggestions on what we should do?
Well, to improve my statement, just also needs to be aware of how different instructors teach us, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So there are things that you definitely cannot mention in the test case, or a certain way that you are not supposed to write our test cases, for example, across the board. It doesn't matter whose plan you follow, is either yours or Marina's or Olsu's. So, but just generally something that is not acceptable by you or Marina or someone else. But if it's something that just different ways of doing things, it's acceptable. Okay, all right. As long as all of them are correct.
Well, we'll make that distinction when we're teaching. Stop switching teachers every class. And I understand that it's because, Anastasia, if you can elaborate, is it the method of teaching? Is it the teaching styles are different and therefore it's confusing you? What is your ultimate reason for your action to not switch teachers? What is, I know what Dennis mentioned.
Actually, I disagree with that. I mean, if I can.
And you can, and that's, I wanted to see what was the reason why Anastasia wants that request. Like, that's her action item. So we want to address everybody's concern. So Anastasia, you wrote on the chat, stop switching teachers every class, please. Is there a reason? Is it because of the style of instruction or, okay. Do you have an example in particular? Every instructor is mentioning different things. Okay. Another action items is Malvina, you wanted more questions in Slack in the right channel. you meant, so this is not an action item.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
just
Probably
wanted
what
the.
to be approved.
Okay.
What does it mean?
It's basically if someone asks a question in like a homework thing and then goes to ask the teacher and asks the same question because they didn't get the answer.
In one channel,
Yes, on a different channel.
multiple
Basically same
Slack
question,
channels is being redundant.
And I can defend them because sometimes the answers don't get back that quickly or as quick as
Okay.
expected. And someone just needs to get those answers.
Okay, guys, that's why you have team, right? You have your team. You can ask your team first. and
Well, we
then-
don't know if they asked or not.
I'm sorry?
We don't know if the person asked the team.
Yeah, that's what I said. They posted their
Okay,
questions
what if
in
they
each
posted,
channel.
what if they posted the team, the question to the team channel already
Okay, guys,
answered?
we can go ahead and
Channels.
address those a little bit later. So these are our action items. We will take into consideration, I'll leave this up on the board. The retrospective URL is on the PowerPoint presentation. Elena, you have one more action item. What would that be? Okay, we'll keep on going. I appreciate everyone's feedback.
Let me add here something. You know what just happened right now? It's actually in the real world scenario that will be happening a lot. When you have agree and disagreements between each other, and that's how you're supposed to resolve any type of issues. For example, I saw like, oh, one teacher, let's pretend that teacher is developer. And let's pretend another teacher is a product manager, for example. One guy saying one thing, another guy saying another thing. And what is the source of truth? And that's very common. That's very common. And that's where frustration in the group, in the team, starts growing. And that's how you're supposed to address in those meetings. So just keep in mind, we don't do this just for fun. That's the real work scenario. You have to resolve, you have to know how you can communicate to each other in the team so you can resolve any type of issues, something like that, which is very common. And obviously you have to be in a professional way. You don't like say, oh, that's not working, right? Or because you said that and he said that, right? Be professional. You're never pointing fingers. The main goal here is to resolve the problem, but not to make a conflict within each other, right? So because in the end of the day, you will go home, you know, and that's it. So you have to understand that your goal in the company will be to deliver the product with the quality standards, right? Which will be meeting the expectation of the end user. Here, your goal is to get as much knowledge as you can and be able to get a job. That's the ultimate goal. Everything else is bullshit. You don't need to, I mean, everything else is really, you don't have to keep on that. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like him. You know, I don't like my team. Who cares? Your team, you have to make your goal like, I need to get a job. What do I need to do? You have your team, so you can ask help from your team. You have multiple teachers who is actually acting as a product manager, as acting developers, right? So you have a lot of resources. So that's your ultimate goal, to get the source of truth. And actually, I like that one. So one teacher, I mean, Marina was saying, don't do the screenshots, and also, no, we should have screenshots. That's also a very common things that could happen. One, as I just mentioned. So you have to have this attitude, like trying to resolve the issue, right? Okay, what I mean, I see that here is a miscommunication. So what's your goal here? You have to find what should I do, right? So, and for that thing, you have to go outside and ask them, not blaming, but ask them, guys, I might miss something, but I've been told that I don't need to have a screenshots attached, but my ticket is not accepting. Can you please figure it out? That's a professional way to find out any issues and any problems in any company. But if you come, hey, I've been told this and that, right? And okay, when is your last day then? Right?
Keep silent on the retrospection.
Exactly. No.
I'm
Retrospective.
just kidding.
No. Don't never be silent on retrospective meeting.
Never.
Retrospective meeting is actually specifically for that, to resolve any conflict. Because if you'll be silent, your frustration will be growing, and then in just the end you say, okay, I'm done. I'm quit. From the company. And that's company. They don't want to do that. They want to keep you happy, basically, in your working environment. And that's, we're trying to be honest, we're trying to be polite, we're trying to be as much as we can within the company, your company, right, to keep you productive. That's the end goal of all these things, not just who is wrong, who is right, not for that.
Right way to ask questions.
Exactly, right way to ask questions. And actually, if you remember, we have these rules and guidance how to resolve the issues. If you got a question, what you have to do first? I mean, obviously, if it's a generic question like, I cannot install Slack, I cannot install Postman, these things is not working. Google it, right? We don't say Google it just because we don't help you. We actually want to help you, but if you will be babysitting you in the company, nobody will be babysitting you. You will be throwing a task and you have to resolve it. They're paying you for money for that, right? And if you are, well, who can help me out? And it looks miserable, to be honest. You don't want to be in that situation. That's why from day one, we're saying that it's like rule of guidance, like what you have to do, how to resolve the question. Try be autonomous. Try to find out and resolve the question by yourself with Google, right? Then who's next? Who can tell me who's next? If your Google cannot help you out, not manager.
You call it team.
Team, correct. Your team, right? So you have to ask the team in the company when you will be working. Your team will be the next line of defense. Okay, I might not getting the question. I mean, answer from my question from Google really didn't help me. I would ask my peer QA, another QA guy, if you have. If you don't have, maybe that's going to be your dev, product, whoever, right? And then who's next? If your team cannot help you out, who's next? Who can tell me?
Team lead.
Team lead, yes, exactly. Team lead. That's the guy who actually can help you out, but you don't bother him within very, very simple questions, right? If team lead cannot help you, who's next?
Manager.
Exactly, right. Manager. Manager, in our case, it's teachers, right? So if teachers cannot help you, and let's say you got the situation and the conflict between you and someone, and it also happens in the company, you feel, oh, I don't like this person, and who can help me? Like manager something, right? So that's when you go to, and you can resolve what I can do. Okay, I'm gonna move you to another group, to another team. Will it help? Yeah, that probably will help, but it's not always the case. So that's the only way how you can learn. If you will be screaming all the time like, oh, it's not working, nobody will help me, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, this type of job maybe not for you. So just accept it. Just accept it. All right, I think I could be helpful.
Evgeny is really helpful. Vahe, go ahead. You had mentioned you wanted to make a comment. Vahe?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No.
Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, yeah. Is it better now?
I think that's the best we can do.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let me make it louder here. Yeah, try it.
Go ahead, Vahe, what's your concern?
There is no concern. I raised my hand long before. I just wanted to thank Marina because this is the first time we have clear instructions for homework.
Okay.
Homework in Slack. It's written that we have to complete web native hybrid application section and also sprint planning with BQ5 1827 and 1830. I thank her very much. And the second thing what I want to mention, it's to students. Please choose all panelists and attendees instead of all panelists because we don't see the question. Cheng, you are so nice. You have so much patience. You answer every question, but we don't see the question. It's
Okay.
students. If they
Got
can
it.
kindly choose all panelists and attendees, it would be so good for all of us.
Okay, we've got
But
that loud
overall-
and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I started to be satisfied with all these lessons. And thanks, Kim, for being here, for making that clarifications, which are brilliant. And he's right. That's how we should face the real world.
Yes,
I have
awesome.
nothing much to add. And also, just remember that people online are as good students as the students who are right there presenting in the class. We are the same.
Got it. Thanks so much, Vahe. I appreciate your contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, guys, let's move on to our actual discussion for our topic today. That is bug and defect triage. Bug and defects, same thing, pretty much means the same thing. There are just slight ways of actually prioritizing it. So what is defect triage? Defect triage is a process where each bug is prioritized based on its severity, frequency, the risk, etc. Triage term is used in the software testing slash QA to define the severity and priority of new defects.
Can you share the wrong screen? Share actually this screen instead of that.
Did I not?
Here we go.
That fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good with the two screens?
Okay.
So the way you understand triage is when you go to the emergency room, right? They put you in the, oh my God, this person's almost gonna die section, to people who are almost slightly gonna die. And then people who just have like a little issue where they can wait till doctors that are free to actually help them. So just look at triage or understand what triage mean is from the really, like the amount of people that's gonna die in the hospital, they put them in a really urgent section so that the doctors can get to them right away. And the people who just probably broke their arm and they're not gonna die, you know, they're not having a risk to pass soon. So the way we triage, it's not as crazy in QA to make that similarity, but I wanted to tell you guys what triage is and when we do bug and defects. So why do we need to have defect triage? The goal of a bug triage is to evaluate, prioritize, and assign the resolution of defects. The team needs to validate severities of the defect, make changes as per the need, finalize resolutions of the defects, and assign resources, mainly used in agile project management. So when you are bringing a bug, and sometimes they triage the bug right then and there. It's either your product manager or your scrum master. They're gonna take a look and says, okay, Dennis, you created a bug today. It did not relate to whatever you were testing, but you noticed it come up. It wasn't part of regression. It wasn't part of smoke testing. Let's take a look at this bug and see what the risk is. How often is this happening? If it were to go out live today, what would be the risk? So you're taking a look at that. And sometimes it happens right then and there, depending on how bad the bug or the defect is. And then sometimes if it's just like a minor aesthetic. It just looks like it's not supposed to be the red that the product owner or designer wants. They're just gonna probably push it to the backlog and they'll revisit it and then just assign it like a very small priority. And that's just how they do the bug defect triage, depending on your company. How often defect triage needs to be conducted in a release? The frequency of a defect triage meeting is not fixed. It depends on the project situation. So here are some important factors that decides the frequency of defect triage meetings based on the project schedule. I mean, if you have a 2-week cycle and you can't even get a story over the line, like it's still in progress, it gets to QA in that JIRA row, and none of it goes to done, and we're close to the 2-week mark. That means that build, that software that they deliver, that website changes or code, whatever, that they delivered for you to test, it's really a big issue, and you're just creating bugs and bugs and bugs. That's when they're gonna like, okay, let's meet up, let's really decide what's important, what's high priority, what's really causing the issue, and they'll triage it then. So it depends on the number of defects in the system and the impact on the schedules of your team members' availability. For instance, if all the bugs that you're reporting, it's gonna take time out from the developers to concentrate on the current release, current products, does that make sense? Does it make sense to take that time out to take a look at these bugs? What is their priority? And then the overall project health, like if it's causing the product to suffer, if we're creating bugs left and right and it's just not a testable product, we've got to sit down and take a look at what bugs are really causing all of this. So that's when they do their bug defect triage. Again, it varies in different company, and you'll get an idea once you start getting out into the real world. Who are the mandatory participants of defect triage? Below, project members always take part in defect triage meetings. The project manager, the test team leader, the technical lead, and the development team leader. So almost always, you will create the bug. You as a QA automated tester, QA manual tester, you'll create the bugs. And you will make a mention. You can verbally, like I mentioned last week, if it's an issue that you know, just common sense saying this will affect users, you bring it up to your team lead if you have a team lead, or if it's a manager, you go ahead and make that communication to them. But overall, it's the main stakeholders. It's the people like, oh my God, if we take Anton off of this project so that he can focus on this bug, are we gonna be able to finish other bugs in this sprint? So there's a lot of people who are above you and won't interrupt the work that you're doing. They're gonna make the decisions on whether or not the bug that Anton found is really crucial. We need to prioritize it. We need to get it fixed in the sprint, or it could wait 2 more sprints later. Those are the people that'll make these kind of meetings. And sometimes you could just be the only person with your product manager and you'll be making that kind of judgment call. You know, if you don't understand the product, you really have to talk to your project manager and say, how many people actually access this particular functionality? If like 10,000 people are accessing it, that's enough people that you need to fix this. You know, these are some of the things that you get when you're talking during this whole training, get an idea of what is important, like logging in, right? Things that you guys notice, and that's why we always say, look into JIRA, look at the bugs people are creating, look at the test cases people are creating, so you can see what, you can make that assessment like, that's not really too important. Like that's not a high severity bug, it's just a minor UI bug. Those are the kind of things that trigger your mind when you start working in the real world. Roles and responsibilities of participants during the defect triage. Test team leader. They schedule a bug triage meeting and send meeting notifications for attendees. They create a defect report and send it to all attendees before the meeting. They assign the priority and severity of the defects. They give a presentation so that other members understand the root cause of a defect. Every meeting note is captured and sent to meeting attendees. When you participate in these triage meetings, everybody's covering their asses. Why? Because it shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? That's the reason why. A lot of these defect triage meetings, it's to understand like, So this bug got created. Why did it get created? What happened? Who let the ball drop? In a way, it's kind of finger pointing, but don't take it personally, because the last thing you want to do is show up to a meeting and says, well, getting argumentative. It's not going to work for anybody. It's not going to make the product fix itself when you start arguing and saying it's not your fault. Some people actually are like, look, it's my fault. I did not catch this particular test case scenario. It's a corner case, but apparently it affects a lot of people. So you come in there with a good positive mentality on what to do to fix the issue, but understand not to let it happen again. That's why they do the root cause defect. Root cause is saying, well, what happened? Why did it happen in the first place? Your development lead, he or she helps in prioritizing the defects. They discuss the defect difficulty and explain the risk involved because of that defect. They allocate work to fix defects to relevant developers. They update the defect resolution and include development notes in any case any information is missing or any additional information needed by developers. Project manager. Project manager helps in the prioritization of the defects. They discuss the next iteration release date for QA, and they need to make sure that the related user representatives are also invited to bug the triage meeting. So anybody across the chat and anybody here who has any questions on what I just mentioned? Pretty clear, right? We know exactly what bug triage. So what happens during the defect triage meeting? Well, the test team leader sends out a bug report with the new defects. During the defect triage meeting, each defect is analyzed to see whether right priority and severity are assigned to it. And this comes into play in what Evgeny mentioned. You're gonna come in together in a room, 4, 5, 6 of you, everybody holds a role. It could be the QA manager asking the team lead to participate. Team lead is not in the, has a schedule conflict and they're saying, Dennis, you're gonna show up and you're gonna represent your bug defect report. This is an understanding to say, you're gonna state your case and your position as to why maybe you spoke to the product manager and you said this is priority. The severity is like priority, and in JIRA, they'll list as priority P1, P2, P3, depending on how the company strategizes it, but pretty much saying this is priority 1. Like it's going to be crucial to money being lost for the company. So they assign these kind of things. And they're gonna ask you, developers are gonna ask you in the room, all the stakeholders, the project managers are gonna say, why do you think it's a severity? Like, do we really need to get it in this sprint? And that's why earlier in the other slide, the product manager is also seeing what's the schedule like. Because you have to understand, it goes back to the essential software development lifecycle. Every single person has a part in it. We don't ever want to see bugs, right? We don't want to ever see any issues. That's a perfect world. There should be no bugs, no defects. But obviously we know the truth. We don't live in a perfect world. But everybody has a schedule to follow. Every year, every company allocates a set amount of money, right? A set amount of money to hire people, a set amount of money to build new things, a set amount of money to do stuff. So every 2 weeks, product manager, development manager, VP, we're gonna build this today. We're gonna build this next week. We're gonna build that. So every time we come across a new defect, we have these kind of meetings because it interrupts every single sprint release. Everything that we wanted to achieve for the year, that they've planned out, that they put money towards, that they said they're gonna hire 5 developers to build something, and then we have 4, we're gonna hire 4 more QA people or whoever's existing in your company to, you know, to address these scheduled releases, scheduled new products. But now we have defects, we have to postpone one of those, right? To address some of these defects. So defects are analyzed or evaluated by the degree of their severity, and this includes discussion regarding the complexity of the defects, the risk, rejection, reassignment of errors is done, and updates are captured in the bug tracking system like JIRA, and the QA engineer will make the changes to each defect and discuss them with each attendee. The comments field is updated correctly by noting essential points of the meeting. What is severity and priority? Severity is defined as the degree of impact the defect has on the development or operation of a component application being tested. Higher effect on the system functionality will lead to the assignment of a higher severity to the bug. QA engineer usually determines the severity level of the defect because they know the code. They know what areas that particular defect touches. What is priority? Priority is defined as the order in which a defect should be fixed. Higher the priority, the sooner the defect should be resolved. Defects that leave the software system unusable or given higher priority over defects that cause a small functionality of the software to fail. Easy enough, simple enough. Any severity is, again, is this really going to take our system down? Like, how high is the severe level of this particular bug? And then the priority is, well, this one's severe, but this one's more severe. So this has priority. You know, there's that distinction that you have to make sure you understand when you're doing these bug triage. So defect, severity, and priority types. In software testing, defect severity can be categorized into 4 classes. We've got critical, major, medium, and low. So critical, this defect indicates complete shutdown of the process. Nothing can proceed further. Major, it is a highly severe defect and collapses the system. However, certain parts of the system remain functional. Medium, it causes some undesirable behavior, but the system is still functional. Low, it won't cause any major breakdown of the system. I'm gonna give you guys an example. I can log in to a website. I can purchase an item, and but I see a pop-up that says my credit card is declined. But then I get an email on my personal email that my payment went through, my item's going to be delivered. What do you guys believe that bug is in what class? Critical, major, medium, or low?
Major.
Major in what?
Medium.
Medium.
It's medium. It's a medium. It's not affecting me to purchase. I can still buy, you know. It's more of a UI. Is that because the UI is coming up where it's coming up as credit card decline for every single person? If you try this scenario and it's hitting everybody else, like, but people are able to buy. I know I can buy because I got an email. So it's not really collapsing the system. It's just some kind of modal or pop-up is coming up by some code or something, but it's not breaking the system. So understand that distinction, because when you go into a meeting and they're like, well, why do you think it's critical? I can still buy stuff. You're not arguing, but you are making a case as to why, you know, developers might say, no, it's low. You can still buy it. Just because that pops up doesn't mean anything else. You can just click OK and the message is gone, but you get that still shipped to you. So understand the categories: critical, major, medium, or low. If it's low are meaning like, oh, well, the button isn't the red that I remember seeing last time. Somebody entered a code and the button's not red. That's low. Critical is if you hit that website, facebook.com, and all you see is a black screen. That's like critical, right? That's freaking critical. Or if you log into Facebook and you can log in, you can search friends and family, but you can't even like load the, you know, the news feed. You can see what your news feed is for today, but you can't see anything else. That's major in the sense that it's not feeding. The news feed is not being populated as you're scrolling down. So understand that distinction. Okay, let's do priority. Defect priority can be categorized into 3 classes. Low, the defect is an irritant, but repair can be done once the more serious defect has been fixed. Medium, during the normal course of the development activities, defects should be resolved. It can wait until a new version is created. And high, the defect must be resolved as soon as possible as it affects the system severely and cannot be used until it is fixed. Where the bug that I just asked you guys to categorize, which is medium, What do you think the priority should be, low, medium, or high?
Medium? Which one?
It can be argued low or medium, right? It's more of a modal popping up saying my credit card declined, but it isn't declined. My purchases went through, I got a confirmation in my email. And it could be argued as medium because there are other people who may not check their email right away, right? They might get on the phone and say, I just got a credit card decline and I have a, my card is valid. I just made a purchase. Like, what's going on? So they don't even check their email. They'll just call the customer support desk and saying, this is a problem. So it depends on who you guys speak to, right? The project manager is like, oh my God, we're getting like 10,000 calls in customer support right now. People are seeing this pop-up credit card, but they're not checking their emails saying that their order went through successfully. So you can argue between medium and low. And when you get into a room during the triage, you will see if half of the room is low, half of the room is medium, and they'll tell you why they think it's low and they'll tell you why it's medium, and you might change your mind. You'll be like, okay, it's definitely a medium. We've got 10,000 people up in customers call center calling us. So you can always be on the fence. You can either be low or medium high. It all depends. Obviously, if it's like the system not even working, it's high. That's a given. But there's always some kind of like black and white where you have to be like, okay, let me see what this engineer is commenting, what he thinks is and what the project manager. And that's part of the whole defect triage meeting.
Kim, I have questions.
Natalie has a question in the room.
If we stated that priority was low, will it be postponed rather than we have medium priority like, I mean, if it's like a human beings, sense, if you see, oh, it's medium, so it needs to be done, right? But if it's the priority is low, it's like, oh, we can postpone for like the next spring or next spring,
Yeah. Yeah, so Natalie had a question/comment, which is, if you have a priority that's low, it could get shuffled to the next sprint and the sprint after that, and sometimes it might not even be addressed. And that's what happens, I think, maybe not last Saturday, but the Saturday before, where we will create bugs and they sit in the queue. They never even come up into the triage meeting. And this is because there are people, the leaders that are participating in the triage, have a bigger picture than what we see. So what we see is what our JIRA tickets are. We go into a sprint meeting and we see, oh, this is what needs to be done this week, right? But the bigger picture, products like, oh, I see Natalie created a bug about this, and he's looking through his chart and he's like, you know what? We're actually gonna be redoing this whole entire thing completely. So it never even makes it to the triage meeting because it's no longer valid. So you always have to they will always be the one who drives the ticket. They're the one who says, okay, you know what, we're gonna be using this new feature and we need to get it addressed, even if it's a priority 0 or low, or they do P0 too, priority 0, priority 1. If it's not that crucial and it can be slipped into a certain sprint, they'll do that. And it's all based on the leaders and what they know, the bigger picture, like what they're planning, what they're releasing. We won't know that. We're in this, they know this much, we know like barely this much. So we always try to be cognizant to create bugs that we know of for the little bit that they give us a preview to, but don't get upset that they're like, Natalie create a bug. 2 weeks, Natalie, I will take care of it. You don't go chasing it, you just wait till they decide to do it.
Let me add here about severity and priority. It used to be when most of the companies and testers or QAs, they would put severity and priority, like, oh, that's a high severity and high priority, or low severity and high priority, and whatsoever. Nowadays, what I mentioned, I mean, there's still a lot of companies who still testers, they're doing this. However, it's not actually a tester's job, or it's not actually a QA's job to prioritize the ticket. That's actually a product or project manager's job to prioritize. Your job is to file this ticket, to address this issue, and you're good. And you can also like put, oh, I think it's a high priority, or it's a low priority, it's a high severity, or whatsoever. it's not actually your job to put the severity. However, as I said, some companies, they will require you to make a good judgment and to put what do you think, right? And as I said, don't take it like, oh, what should I do? Some companies still do this, but in most cases in Agile, you would probably just need to file this issue and address it to product manager, and he will figure it out. Do we want to fix it right now, or it's like we can postpone it and we can even not to address it whatsoever. All right, so don't take it.
Yeah, and these fields in Jira actually are disabled for you as a QA engineer, QA tester. Like the product manager or the scrum master wouldn't even let a QA. I don't have the ability to assign the severity or the priority. It's up to the product manager on your company to say, this is very important to get into a release or not important. That's not your job, but you should be familiar with it. Because when the bug comes back and you look at the categories in Jira and you're like, oh, product manager actually thinks like me. He considers that as a critical bug. So it's more of you understanding the industry and what they're doing when they assign certain categories and severity. So you know, like, oh, okay, at least somebody out in my team also acknowledges that this is an issue. You know, that's a good reassuring understanding of that. Tips for determining the severity of a defect. So you decide the frequency of occurrence in some cases. If the occurrence of a minor defect is frequent in the code, it can be more severe. So from a user's perspective, it is more serious even though it is a minor defect. And you isolate the defect. Isolating the defect can help to find out its severity of the impact. So let's practice on your bugs. And we'll do that afterwards. The severity, critical, non-critical. For instance, key features that does not work. It's a critical, really critical, and it's urgent. Pretty common sense on that. Company logo is the wrong color, not critical. Pretty low priority. Agree? Company logo?
Yeah.
Unless you're a logo company, right? That would be really bad. If you're a logo company creating logos and your logo's off, then to that company, that's really urgent and critical. So you have to understand where you're coming from and in what company you are. Feature that is rarely used does not work. I get it, critical and low. I mean, it's a feature, but it's not really used often, and you can track that based on like Adobe Analytics and stuff like that, where the product manager's like, oh, you know, Natalie, that feature, even though we completed it about 3 months ago, we haven't really seen anybody use it. Nobody really cares for it. So we can also push that later on. A caption on an image is written in the wrong font. It's like UI. UI is not too critical and it's pretty low. And then here's the defect priority list. It's critical, high, medium, low, and they'll have it color coded in Jira for you. We have our coffee break, but before we do, I want to add, there's some comments. Yeah, so Elena mentioned, well, she has a habit of not checking the email and could run the card several times about the scenario I mentioned. And again, when you get into these triage bugs, you know, triage meeting, you are there as a team. You are there to find the end result is what's going to get these bugs resolved quickly. And going back to the retrospective and adding to Evgeny's comment, you guys have the best environment to learn. We are, the complaints that you mentioned or the suggestions to improve, by no means compared to the real world. When you have issues with your coworker, and then you have to have, you know, talks with your manager because certain people aren't doing it the correct way, because your product manager may not have the technical understanding of what you guys are testing. So they're giving you one story and one way to test it. And he's like, oh, you're coming up with all these test cases and these test scenarios. Like, don't worry about them. Nobody's going to do it. But you're like, I need to write these test cases and you need to write all this. And then you start creating bugs because it's not working the way the product manager says. And then the product manager as well, you need to talk to the database people because they're responsible for this. So you're always having these, conversations at work that tells you to go to other sources. You always need to find the source of truth for yourself. And that's the purpose of QA. We want you to have this kind of exercise to be able to like work with different people from different cultures. And I'll give you an example that literally just happened yesterday. Viking cruises. We were supposed to launch this past September 27th. We did not make our deadline because everything was broken. After we did a system integration testing, it did not write the information to our databases. It was a bug that I opened with my developers and a bug that I asked one of our QA associate to take a look at. It didn't get done. And it's a huge thing because when you're booking airlines, when you're booking cruises and you're working with people's data, we can't let this particular product go out. So the VP, the CTO, sat us in a room yesterday, and the front-end developer and the product manager, they were crying, females crying in front of the VP. And they were arguing yesterday. This is yesterday. And the thing is, the both of them had their birthdays yesterday. One was saying that QA, me, and my team had too many test cases requirements. Sorry, you wanna know why? It's because it's causing these issues. The front end said, no, you shouldn't have tested those because I spoke to the product manager and she said that wasn't valid. So they're blaming each other professionally, but they're crying at the same time because the VP is sitting across the way listening to see how we as a team work. And you guys can make all the complaints and all the criticism here. We welcome it. This is what we're here for. We're an open platform to address our concerns. But if you're looking from the inside out, if you were in the meeting yesterday, I was so embarrassed. I hate seeing people cry, not because I'm bad or anything, but your VP is sitting right there. Are you going to cry every time he asks you why you can't get your requirements done, why the code isn't working? It doesn't work that way. I can cry all the time. I'm a mom, but I'm not gonna do that. The thing is we need to put our personal life aside when we get into work, and we have to vouch and stand our ground and say why things work. You as a tester could work differently and record bugs differently and understand different things from every single team leader. Yesterday, we didn't get anywhere. The VP stepped in and says, apparently it's your guys' birthday. You guys are very sensitive right now, and we're not going anywhere. We're going around in circles. So come back Monday, enjoy your birthday weekend, and let's see what we're gonna address. So I'll let you know what happens on Monday, but we didn't get anywhere. But for us to be adults and to have somebody lecture us, our VP, out of respect, that's pretty embarrassing. And it happens. I'm telling you, this happened yesterday at my company. If you guys are looking in, you guys don't want to be in that scenario. I don't want to be in that scenario. I was just like, why do I have to be here? It is so like, it was so awkward. It was really awkward. But the solution was, I don't know what else to convince them that these are the test case scenarios. Like, these are my test cases. I put it out. This is what it's needed to test this feature. And if they're not building it or wanting to test it to that level, then they have to give me some other approach. So be mindful, be professional, and we can go on our coffee break. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. We are back from our longer than usual break. Give you 5 extra minutes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Everybody was waiting for coffee.
Okay, guys, smoke execution. In smoke testing, the test cases that we choose to cover are the most important functionality or component of the system. For example, a typical smoke test would be verify that the application launches successfully, check that the GUI is responsive, etc. We are going to smoke test the Deans after the latest build across the browsers and the platform. So everybody who is currently looking at this webinar, let's go to the Deans master on our laptop devices, and we're gonna execute our smoke test cases. I'm sure we'll find some cool bugs. Let me switch to the screen. So I'm assuming that if I were to go into Jira right now, I see some of you have created some test cases. Let me see, new share to.
The most recent ones will be regression.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a smoke execution.
So you guys have the Dean's website up, right? So. Give me one smoke test that we can do together. I'm just going to pull up the Dean's website. Anyone on the other end as well, if you guys have a particular, what are some of our smoke test items?
Login?
Can somebody find a Jira ticket for me that covers that? Have anybody written a smoke test? And we will try to follow a ticket, or have you guys created any of your own smoke tests?
Yes.
Just pull up one Jira and we'll do it together. Okay, so Anton has one. I'm gonna pull yours up as well. Verify the Sydney. Oh, this is our favorite test case from last week.
But not smoke.
Why do you believe this is a smoke test, Anton?
Make the login.
Yeah. Do people on the chat, on the webinar, and do anybody here believe this should be a smoke test?
No.
It could be part of regression testing, but it's not a smoke test. Anton, okay, Anton is asking why not. Anton, are you able to speak on this matter? Anton, you can talk. I don't think he has a mic. Okay, Anton, you're gonna have to switch your comments to all panelists and attendees so everybody on the chat can hear you. Anton brought this particular Jira up And he's considering that this be a, no worries, Anton, a smoke test. And the reason why we are telling him that it's not is because this does not address regular, everyday, today functionality. What Anton's trying to tell me, if I understand, is that everybody in our audience will be hitting or wanting to travel to Sydney. Highly unlikely, right? So that's not a smoke test. Smoke test is generally the same. Excuse me?
We don't see that screen. Could you please share that?
New share. Which screen? Okay, got it.
This one, right?
Yes. All right, I apologize, you guys. This is BQ5-1179. Roman, do you see it now? Okay, we don't believe that this should be part of a smoke test. And if you guys are on the chat, do you see why? I hope everybody sees the screen. But we understand, right? We clearly, Anton, if you have any more questions as to why you believe this is a smoke test, when your voice is better next week, we'll let you hit the floor to defend your ticket. But we will go ahead and eliminate that this is not a smoke test. So let's see, Elena, I'm sorry, not Elena, you have BQ5-1168 that you have written. Why isn't this? This is the one. So if you're saying, if I follow this particular smoke test, trying to go to the, you're saying if I click the earn money, Elena, I'm going to have you speak and instruct me on this, on your login flow. Okay, Elena. I see two Elenas. Markova. Oh.
It's not her.
Okay. Let me verify the login flow. So she's saying, given that I click on earn money, is that a login flow?
No.
Earn money.
If you scroll down, there will be like a login button.
Okay.
Maybe.
So she's saying earn money. When I click on the login button, then the user is taken to the login page. I'm in this URL and she's talking about this login button.
Yeah.
Maybe she.
No, I think she meant the login to invite friends button.
Maybe earn money page.
She said earn money page.
Yeah, maybe she means the login
earn
for
money page.
Earn money page.
If we go into the earn money page.
Okay. Elena, I see you on the chat. Do you mind? You're allowed, you're unmuted, Elena. Can you hear us?
Hello, yes. Yeah, I just try to explain in chat.
I'm sorry.
Those are not my tests. You just said like who can give a link to.
Oh, I apologize. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I just pulled
Okay.
up a couple tests that say that this is a login.
I appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
Elena. Do you
Sorry.
have any comments towards this? Do you believe that this is a smoke test?
No, I just think just a regular login would be a smoke test, and just
Okay.
maybe checking the main pages.
Okay.
We would use like creating a trip. So
Okay.
basically like something from login, creating a trip, and that everything that would lead us to book the trip and buy it, basically.
Okay. Perfect. That's exactly simple smoke test. Thank you, Elena, for your contributions.
Mhm.
So Anton is a smart guy. He's letting us critique every single one of his bug and smoke tests. You're awesome. You're getting a lot of feedback from all the test cases that you're creating. So I won't say that BQ1168 is a smoke test, because what you're doing is you're looking at a specific URL and you're saying that a lot of people are trying to earn money and they're going to send a lot of referrals to this website. If that breaks, it's really not that crucial. We actually want to log in fully into the website. Does that make sense? This is a URL mainly to send our friends and family to go in here.
I guess they can see.
They should be on the dean's list, right? That's the one I wanted them to be on, and I need to push. So I don't really care if the smoke test, I mean, obviously I want to log in, but it doesn't matter what, like, we don't have to be specific on earning, like, I don't have to go directly to this URL to earn money to smoke test it. I should be able to log in the moment I hit this URL. That's a really important bug right there. I mean, a really important feature, right? You should be able to just hit the main URL and be able to log in.
And sign up.
You're right. You can add the smoke test, like the earn money portion later. It could still be part of it. But you should be able to log in. These are all your simple smoke tests. You should be logging in, signing up when you go directly to the URLs. You can add to your smoke test, and Anton believes that, and that's fine. Anybody else? BQ51380. Homepage is loading and the layout appears. What does everybody think? This is a very general idea, right? When you log in or when you load this particular URL, you're being generic in that you just want the homepage to display the different layouts and stuff like that. It could be another smoke test, a very generalized smoke test. And then you get down to the nitty-gritty, like, where should the boxes appear? That's like opening a new can of worms. So like, as long as the images are rendering, that's a good kind of basis of the different UIs that you're looking for when you're just loading the website. Who's smoke test? Nazar. I would put this in my smoke test, but then I'd also elaborate between, like, the header should have this, the bottom border should have that, so that you know exactly, specifically the smoke test cases that you know, like if certain images always break, you always want to check that. That could be another smoke test that you want to add to as well. Okay. So Malvina made a comment here on the chat that we're supposed to split areas of the website in the team. And if somebody got a footer on earn money section for the smoke testing, that's what we did. And not everyone got the most features to test. So when you look at the overall site, and this is something that you also need to apply when you're working, is just because you're only testing a particular feature, you also have to look at the whole entire project together, like the whole product. Like, just because you're working on adding a new product to that particular website, you still need to log in overall, right? You can't just only focus on what you're assigned to be that week. Because if you do that, then other parts of the system's breaking and you're just like, well, I was only told to look at the footers. Doesn't that kind of explanation won't work with anybody else. You are fully responsible for the product from start to finish. So you have to create your smoke test. You have to look past what you are assigned on a sprint basis, because what you're doing may break the login. And that's why the smoke test is there. That you create these smoke tests, you need to log in, you're loading the URL, and the page is displaying all the images. They're supposed to display 4 images as the main requirement. Like one of the steps that you can add is like, if you see 4 images that you, like a child, a man, a girl, whatever, your images are loading correctly, like one of the checks that you have. We should, Malvina, we should always test certain different smoke tests. You should definitely take that into consideration. That was her concern. So that is an assignment that Marina wants us to do, is just, you know, take a look at these bugs, make sure to allocate which one you guys believe are smoke test cases that you guys should create. It could be the same ones that Anton had, or it could be the same one that Nazar had, but you guys need to have your own smoke test set that you feel, because that's your suite. That's the practice that you guys have to do at your job. You know, you might come in here, you might start the job and you would be halfway into the product and you still need to go back and look at the overall understanding of the product. You need to create your own smoke test that you know of, like based on this particular product, they need to be able to log in. They need to be able to create the trip, right? What's the purpose of having this just load and they can't even click on create a trip? That's the pointless. That whole entire thing is pointless. I had somebody raise a hand. Vahe, you had a question?
Yes. So as you just opened the smoke where it says that when you load the home page, we should see some picture, yeah, correct? So right now I'm seeing at your screen in the right corner, it says Nairobi Safari Walk. And I opened on my browser and I don't see that part, that Nairobi Safari Walk. So that's a bug, actually. And that's a simple smoke test. So I think I found a bug here.
Can you click refresh on it and tell me if you still see?
Yes, I clicked refresh several times, doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, you could definitely create a bug, and this is one of the slides that says we're going to check it on different devices and platforms, right? If you create a smoke test, that when you click the earn money URL, that earn money URL should be present in all devices, all browsers, and things like that. That's the smoke test. That's the consistent test that you need to see in every single viewport and every single browsers and things like that. That's the smoke test, that you essentially need to have these items. Does that make sense, Vahe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, you found a bug, and this is definitely the exercise, and you nailed it on the head. So create a bug, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, let's do a new share, and we are going to it's a little shaky, but smoke execution. Execute your smoke test cases. I hope that some of you have created those smoke test cases. Anton, you did a wonderful job of identifying what isn't and what isn't your test case, what's considered a smoke test cases. There's a comment in here that says, I don't have Nairobi Safari Walk either, just empty, nothing at all on the left from earn money. Again, bug, but it's not a smoke test. There's a difference between bugs and smoke tests. You guys need to make this, create the smoke test. Those given if-then statements are the best way to do it, and identify those test cases, smoke test cases, so you know.
This was because you once created a trip, and instead of my trip, it says the actual name trip.
What is that?
So if you log in the first time, there will be earn money, create trip, log in, and
It's
sign
okay,
up.
yeah, it's okay.
But if you actually create a trip, you will go to the main page, so you can like go back to it if you want.
So
Because
you stay logged in.
yes.
It looks like it.
It doesn't actually mean that you stay logged in. If you log out, it will be the same. So it's technically is a bug, but it will
It's
be.
remember.
Yeah, it basically
last or
remembers.
something.
So that's a question or a bug or inquiry that you can create. So everybody on the other side, we just had somebody comment, Dennis made a comment about the creating a trip, and then when you're the last login, it remembers it. So it might be the cookies holding on to that session ID and bringing the same.
It shouldn't be like this because technically once you log out, it should not save your history like as to what trips you created, but it still has. So
is that a functionality or is that a bug? Do you know?
Same thing with search field.
It recalls the search fields?
No, it's like remembers like a last
search.
Yeah.
Which is a good functionality.
search field is fine. I mean,
Right?
like Amazon and stuff, they still remember even if you log out because it's the browser. It's not the.
No, if you're looking right now, like I said London trip.
It's your browser saves it. It's not the server. It's not the website.
It's not
caching.
It's caching. If you go as incognito, for example, it will not be there because it's the browser saved it. It's fine. I mean, it's not a bug. It's the browser saves it. But if you, for example, come in the first time on like absolutely incognito tab, and it will still be showing you the same thing, means yes, there's some sort of.
So just to give you an idea, a lot of times when we are testing in a work environment, if we're on web applications, web-based on browsers, there's two ways to test it to see if it's an issue based on the requirements that's set in the story. Test it with just your regular browser that you use to access your own email or browse for certain things. And then, like Dennis mentioned, do it in incognito mode. Incognito mode, you're literally on a clean slate. Things aren't being stored from your past session, from your past login. So you can kind of compare to kind of see the behavior. So what you mentioned is saying that it shouldn't have that history in your search history. That's actually a good and a bad thing depending on who you're talking about, right? Like if I search, I want to see what my history is, what other stuff I've searched for. So I can see, oh, I guess I searched for London before, or I guess I searched for Australia before. That could be a feature. But if you go to incognito and your search is clean, that's because you're treated as a new user and you're not getting that information back. So it's just identifying and also questioning like some of the requirements, being able to understand if it really truly is a bug, or maybe it could be an enhancement. It's part of the whole product of the Dean's List to allow you to remember what trips you've taken.
No, we don't know requirements, right?
Create a bug, right? It'll be like, this is by design. This is the way it should be. So if you ever have a question, create an issue about it. But in this particular portion, have some of you created any smoke tests in Jira?
Yeah.
Every single one of you, right?
Yeah.
So can you share one? I have a feeling you have.
We need to execute some, right?
Yeah, we're gonna execute some.
I have actually I have a login.
Okay, what's the number?
Not sure. I have 8, 5, 2. This might be 8, 5, 2.
Let's see. Let's do this one. let me just make sure. So everyone, just for our smoke test execution demonstration, we are going to take this one and we're gonna do a walkthrough of it. And so this says, given a registered user's login. Sorry guys, I'm trying to do the screen. Trying to do the screen as well as trying to show them this one. User 1. So I'm in the login section. Gonna put in my email address. And what are we testing here? We are testing to verify email and password are valid. I have been copying and pasting.
Yeah.
And our password. So we're just verifying that if we enter a valid email and a valid password, we should be able to log in. Simple, right? Look at that. We're logged in. The other smoke test that you can create, this pass, excuse me, it didn't fail. It passes, right? It's a quick smoke test. This is manual, and we'll talk later about automation, stuff like that. Once you go from here, is there anything that'll identify that you're logged in? Like, what's the next smoke test after this?
I have to know if I'm exactly logged in, if there is a, yeah.
If my avatar, right, is updated, I'm successfully logged in. That's a good indication.
Yeah.
That's very simple. Very quick smoke test. Anyone else want to execute another one while we're here before we break into our homework assignments? I want a little bit more of let's look at the test case that I think there were some in here.
Did anybody test the create trip thing?
We can search for it if you want.
It's generally the main point.
Would this be the smoke my trip module?
Probably.
I'm sorry, is this the way how we're supposed to execute the test cases?
These are the manual smoke test execution. You're literally doing this manually.
What about in Jira? How are we supposed to do it in Jira?
You're supposed to follow, these are your test cases that you are writing in
How
Jira.
we mark, she means how we mark as executed,
Yeah.
past.
There is give me 1 second, where is, okay,
There's literally button saying execute.
yeah.
See, up top.
So once you get, into Jira, there's this action where you execute it and it goes into like buckets, like Monday, October 14. You have this 10, it's in a filter, right? For Monday test, Monday smoke test. And that's because you guys are familiar with build releases. Like if the developer, they send you a new build with all the new features and product, right? You're going to run a smoke test and you're going to create a filter, and you can there's some filtering methods where you can add you add it to a test folder. So that test folder, you can name it like Friday, October, something or another test cases or smoke tests. And then you'll add this particular one because you believe this is a smoke test case. You'll add it into that test folder. And then you'll go over every single one. And when you'll execute, there's a option to say it's either pass or failed. So when you look in your filter for that Friday against the new build you got from your company, whatever's, 5 of those 10 smoke tests, let's just say you have 10 cases. You have the login trip module, this module, you got the valid password info, you got some other test cases, right? You're executing this manually. When you get out of the manual, you're gonna make it automated. And this will just run, and if it doesn't pass, it'll be marked as failed. If it's pass, it passes. So you don't have to go in and walk in. What you're doing is a manual smoke test. What we're doing is called a manual smoke test. We're following our test cases, we're executing them line by line by line.
What's happening if we're gonna just push the button execute? It's gonna be executed by Jira or?
You. It says manual execution. It means that you started the test, this particular smoke test, and this can be cloned. So you can have this 10 tests. Next week, you have the next 10 tests. The same 10 smoke tests because you still want logging in, everything. That's why manual, it gets really hard. It gets boring.
Okay, so
right?
if it's fast, we're gonna push put pass, right? If it's
Yeah,
manual,
when you hit execute, it'll give you the option of pass or fail.
but it's manual. We put it manually. Not
Yeah.
manual. Okay.
Yeah, everything's manual because you're gonna do this exact steps by going into Dean's, logging in exactly what I'm doing. That's a manual smoke test right there. Complete manual smoke test based on your test case right here. Because when you become a QA lead or supervisor, you're not gonna be doing this manually. You're gonna have the next QA person do it manually and have them understand and learn the product and the software. You're gonna have them follow these exact 10 test cases that you've assigned every week for them, every time we get a new build, for them to test it manually. That's what a lot of people do. They create these set of test cases that we have to log in, we have to be able to change our password, we have to be able to get an email verifying our password. These are the same 10 test cases that you follow manually and that you work and you do quick. And then you can have like where you remember this in your sleep, right? When you are able to build it in automation, you just hit a button, execute 10, and it'll say pass or fail, pass or fail. That means you never go to Dean's yourself. That's manual, you're doing manual. Now, when you program everything, everything's automated. And then you'll see the test case getting updated or failed, pass or fail. Does that make sense, Natalie?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dennis, go ahead. I'll give it.
Yeah, if we still have time, just predicting some of the questions that will follow up on the channels. Can you go, and I think Marina already showed it from the beginning, but can you go like step by step, creating a cycle, putting the task into cycle, and then executing it just for the sake of it, because we're recording, people will go back to the recording, and I'm pretty sure they will have this question that's like, okay, what should I actually do? Just go here, and execute, or create a folder, cycle, and then have to cycle and execute. Just
I will
if we have
take, actually I wanted to take, I'll just take this now, reverse it.
Yeah.
Again, it's how you play around with it. So let's just say, Anastasia, you're a manual QA tester, and you can actually have to add all these test cycles and folders. The idea is that you create like versions alongside what your product release is. Does that make sense? These are mainly filters. I have to go back and.
Kim, create from the tests thing.
Let me see.
Test.
Yeah, here.
That plan test.
Yeah.
So nothing's been set up, right?
But there are.
No, we have a bunch of unscheduled
There are a lot.
people who are just like trying to see what we can do, but we're not executing yet. That's why.
No, here, but
Let's want to create a cycle. This is unscheduled, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. We're going to go ahead and create our new cycle. Let's just say Friday. Actually, a better name. Let me do smoke test on 12.0 build. Released on October 5th through the build that we're going to get, what is 12.0? We're going to test it because we're having our QA environment. You can either fill it out or however you want to do it. The date. And what did I do? October 8th. This will be repeated every time you get 12.2, 12.3, 12.4. Okay, now, let's see if I can add it to, I don't think I can even see it.
At the bottom.
There you go. I'm not going to assign it to anybody. Can I assign it to myself? And this is where you as a team lead can assign it to the new person who just started the company to start having them manually test, or you can assign it to yourself. And you can create this for every single week, every time you get version 12.1, 12.2, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Where is my search test? I want to I am in test. This is mine right here.
Yeah.
So you have this list of items, right? So this is just like one test in this particular ad hoc. I only added one 1516. I'm probably going to add, let's just say if I add 1104 to my smoke test, I'm going to add 1101. So in my smoke test, I'll have like 5 test cases. And that same knowledge is also applied to regression, but I don't want to confuse you. So let me just did I do 1516? Where's Anton's famous Sydney one? What number is that? Do you guys, let's see, which one did I have? I just want to add that to show you. I wanted a test case. I'm going to add BQ5 1506 to it as well. So now I have 2 test cases that are considered smoke test items. So this will just keep on growing, and it'll keep on growing. And what you do is you have this list show up. It could show up every week based on when your product is released. It could show up 2 months from now that you care to do a smoke test, because sometimes maybe you don't get a new build until 2 months afterwards. But these tests will always stay the same. Obviously, when things change, like if you change your login now where you have to have them log in on the second page, then you come back and update these test cases. But you'll have two. So I'll open this. It's under my project name. There's priority set to it. And I just click execute. Execute ad hoc, meaning I just go into Dean's, follow direction of that test case, step by step, enter password, email login. I execute, the core, and then you can say pass or fail manually. And when you say pass, and when you say fail, you can create issues against that defect, why that smoke test failed in Jira.
This is like result. Our execution is if it's failed, we have to.
You would create a bug. Yeah, because that bug is going to be considered in either the triage or the next sprint release, right? Because every time you execute the same 10 bugs in this 10 cases manually, if it breaks, create a bug. It didn't break last week, but it's now breaking. That's how you keep track to make sure these essential, main, important stuff are working. So if it passes, and you'll see a result of the list of the stuff right here. Like you can say, oh, this one passed that step. That's why when I suggested last week we do individual line item, is that you go through this and then you can say, oh, when I did this, this happened, it passed. But when I did this step, number 2, and I did that, it failed. And then you can create a ticket out of that failed item where it failed in that step. Sometimes maybe the login field got grayed out and the code was incorrect and it doesn't allow anybody to put password anymore. So we create a bug about that. These are all manual test cases. Everything you do, you're going in there and saying fail. You go back to switch to Dean's list, you perform that and you go back to your item, it says this failed. These are all marking it as manually. When you guys get to be so awesome and so amazing and you're tired of doing this manually, you become automation engineers. You get the setup, you get Azad, you got Ageni, just getting you guys set up to create all of these automation test suites. So all you do is just click a button and it just runs by itself and it'll tell you where it failed.
How was supposed to attach the bug report if the test?
It's a new bug. It's a new bug.
Do we need to link or to attach?
No, you don't. You don't link it because these same smoke tests are the same next week and the week after that. When you create a bug, you're creating a bug in either the backlog or in the sprint that you're working on at your company.
I just was confused if it's failed, so I attached the bug report and I link it.
You can link it in. You can link it in.
Otherwise, I couldn't find it.
You can definitely link it in. It's a good way to say, oh, 2 weeks ago, I saw the same issue. And it's because I ran the same test against build 12.0. You can do that. You can definitely link it right here. These are the attachments, all the defects, how many defects were created. Everything's here. That's why I said play around, because I don't want to show you this. Nobody walked me through on all of this test cases. That's why I wanted you guys to start, oh, it's over here. Everywhere is click. You can attach it. If you don't have time to write a bug, you can attach all the information right here, create a bug later on. Like if all they want you to do is just smoke test, just tell me what failed. I don't want you creating bugs. Just tell me the 10 tests you're executing, which failed. Just tell me. And then you can attach everything to this and then create a bug later so that they can fix it. The product manager can triage the bug and see if it's an issue that they need to fix right away. And your test cycle, one of the questions that I have on the chat is test cycle name. It's not our name, no. It shouldn't be your name unless you really want to own it and have everybody look at it. But pretty much when people pull up this executed test cycle, did I save this one already? Let me just save it. So everything's all saved. But for this particular case, the reason why we're asking you to create your own test case and put in your name is so that we can track it, right? If you start doing October 6th, I don't know who actually did the executed test cases. So for this exercise, for our course, let's do it by name. But in the real world, you would be like, oh, this is 12.0 smoke test. So that your manager is like, when did our smoke test fail? Did it fail on build 12.0 or did it fail on build 13.0? Does that make sense? That's why you have these different groups. So if I were to go into, see how you see this list, 1539, 1538, you keep on building this list and it'll say pass, pass, or fail. You have 10 main tests. If they all pass, smoke test pass.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Let's say real life, and there are few testers, and there are a lot of test cases, and how we should know which one we are ready to our cycle, and how we should search them, or how we create cycle if there are a lot of test cases.
So you have your smoke test cycle. It's almost always created when you first start a job, right?
Just mine, maybe someone else.
No, you're going to create it for the entire QA department, right? So people are going to share your test case. So the question in here is, how do we understand where to assign our test cases to what cycle when we actually go to the real world? So I already have my smoke test case at my work, right? Anybody, I could say Anastasia, I could say Olga, go execute the test case named smoke test suite, right? Just go ahead and execute the 10 steps in there and tell me if it passed or failed. You can add the test here, and how you add tests is that you don't want to mess up your smoke test suite unless there's a feature that actually is necessary, that we need to add it to the smoke test suite, right? Like, let's just say you had 10, and then your company says, hey, you know what, I want to be able to, moment that they log in, they need to enter their credit card in order to access. That's important. That's something that you, your team, everything's said, this needs to be in there. Like, no matter what, that particular feature has to be in. You build that test case during your sprint, and you add it in to the smoke test suite. But when you're talking about functionality, that's a regression suite. So let's just say this week you had a new feature that says, I want to be able to add waitlisted items to my cart and I want to pay for them. You create a test cases, given that this item's a waitlist item, I still am able to add it to my shopping cart and be able to check out. That's a feature. It's not important. That's not the overall feature, but you've already wrote the test case and everything for it, right? You add that test case to your regression suite.
Same.
Does that make sense? Then next week, you run your regression test manually, which you don't want to do. That's the reason why automation came about, because you can't do these manually. The smoke test normally isn't 10 at my company. It's actually 20 test cases, but we have it automated because I cannot do this 20 and then also verify new products or new issues coming in. That's what regression suite is. That makes sense? And yeah, Anton, I just made an example. Anton asked build 2.0 and more, depending on what version you're testing the smoke test against, or what, I don't know, whatever versioning info that you can keep track of your test cases. That's the reason why when we name our test cases, we could just say, oh, this is test case run against the 12.1 build that we got. You guys all understand what builds means, right? It's like a version. It's like you get a new Toyota 2016. You smoke test that it can drive, that you can put gas into it. That's the 2016 build of that Toyota. And then they give us another car, and that build version is 2017. Now we're testing the same thing, the smoke test. We're testing the car. It can still drive. It can still put gas into it. We've tested all those smoke tests that we tested for 2016. We still made sure it works when they give us 2017. We're just going to still make sure these 10 smoke tests will still work on our 2018 Toyota and our 2019 Toyota. These are all the smoke tests that we're applying to it. Clear? Clear? Okay, guys. Let's move on to the homework. Our homework. I know that some of you had made a comment about a little bit clearer items about homework. So if you guys aren't clear about the homework, let me know. But we're going to go to the LMS and we're going to complete the web, the native, and the hybrid applications on this the LMS URL.
I think Marina in the homework channel, she basically posted a couple of screenshots as to what she wants us to do.
Okay.
So
I want to make sure
that's
that.
why Wahid said it was clear now.
Oh, it's clear now. Okay, everybody clear on the other side?
Can you open the new, lesson presentation that Marina uploaded in the morning? Because this one is me some homeworks to do. She uploaded the new one on the side.
Let me check. Let me check and see. Hold on for a second, guys. I have somebody in the room here that says there's additional homework that was posted on the Slack channel, and I want to bring it up to everybody.
Yeah, it is
Basically, new sprint starting, but that was a.
You mean
really
this one?
No.
No.
Okay. Hold on, let me see. Let's see. Did she post it in general?
Homework channel.
Oh, I don't have the homework channel. That's probably why.
And basically, she had two tickets.
Like, I'm not creating, I'm trying to join. So, yeah, these are the ones that complete the web native hybrid applications. Let me see. She wants you to look at the tickets BQ5-1827. Is everybody seeing that? Mm-hmm. And the BQ5-1830. And we had questions on that. Is that?
My bad.
Dennis, you got me all confused. Okay, guys. Let me pull in. I'm gonna close that. Okay. So BQ1827, she wants us to do a sprint planning on this. And the new share 1827. Okay, guys, review. Can I just move this here? Review your bug reports and test cases. We've done that in JIRA, right? We've reviewed that. And the reason why she wants us to review it is so that aside from this exercise here, you can also add what is the most interesting bug you found in your career. And that's actually an interview question. Like, they want you to be proud of you breaking the system. You know, if you find an issue, the person interviewing you wants to know what it is that you found. You know, everybody's interested in all the work that you do, and you definitely want to make a note of it. So does anybody have an idea of what the Fibonacci number is that you want to give to that exercise?
3?
I think it's a good 3. So you guys are clear about this particular homework instruction? Everyone? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. Oh, this is a long list. Does anybody have an idea of what number we're going to estimate this for? You guys got a chance to look at that?
If you say it's long list, maybe 5.
There is example.
Right here.
That's it. 1.
Did somebody say 1?
Yeah.
You guys are confident. That's amazing.
This is 10 bullets. That's it.
But 10 important bullets.
10 important bullets. It's going to be transferred over to your resume. So we've got it clear, right? So that we want you to remember, not just me, but we want you to remember the course and what you learned here so that you can actually apply this when you go to an interview. So Oksana, are you clear? You had a question about what will be our practical task? What will we do next week? These are your homework assignments right here in the BQ. If everyone's clear on the homework, I'm going to start opening up the forum to some questions. Okay, does anybody want to raise their hand? Does anybody have any question here? Okay. Alexandra, you had a question, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me, guys?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, so I have one question. Let's imagine the situation. For example, I've executed like a smoke test suite, and for example, today a new build came out. So should I like duplicate my smoke test suite, or I should do it like a different way somehow?
Yeah, the reason why you're creating a smoke test suite, these are a list of tests, crucial big item testing, like logging in, buying or using your credit card. These 10 tests will always be duplicated almost every time you get a new build, because you don't want the new build to prevent you from doing the simple things like logging in.
Gotcha.
So if you get a new build at 10 o'clock and you test it against, let's just say the 10 a.m. build, and the smoke test passed and all of the 10 test cases that you had for the smoke test, it all passed. Then you get a new build with changes from developer at, let's just say 5 o'clock before you had to leave, and you completed that smoke test again, that same manual 10 set of smoke tests, and 5 of them failed. Guess what? That build is bad. Because if you can't do the most 5 important things, that build is bad. And the reason why you create these smoke tests is that you can quickly do these complete items. And then in the event that you're telling the developers and you're creating all these bugs, you're like, oh, this build is really bad. The 5 p.m. build that you gave me is really bad. Can you roll it back to the 10 a.m. build? So you can have that kind of agile conversation, because you know, when you're doing all these testing, you don't know if somebody else, like the product manager or even your VP, might be looking at this particular product. And if he can't log in, there's going to be an issue. And you can't just go home at 5 o'clock and saying, you know what, I'll run the smoke test tomorrow morning when I get in. No, every time you get a new build, you run these 10 exact smoke tests. So at least you know that the product can be logged in, that it can be searched, that it can be able to transmit a payment. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and one more short question. So when I duplicate the test case suite, does do the test cases that are inside this test suite duplicate them as well, or?
Yeah, you just create a clone. You've seen the button where it says clone, right? You can clone a test
That's
case.
what I'm asking. Yeah,
perfect.
That's what I'm asking.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah,
Anything
I got it.
else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Roman, you're next.
Yep, I have a question actually related to Alexander's question. When you duplicate a test or a test case, and let's say on the previous build, there was some sort of an issue and you put comments to it or whatever, made any maybe adjustments, do the comments actually duplicate with the test case once you do it?
You can clone, and there's options to clone like the sprint date. You can clone if you want to bring comments over and import it over. It's all up to you. Cloning has a lot of capabilities. If you still, if you want the information to be migrated over to the next cloning test suite, it's all up to you. If you want to keep that kind of, tracking, but normally people just clone it and it just starts fresh. Like you have the first 10 steps of the smoke test in that test suite completely blank. It's unexecuted, everything starts fresh.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Guys, any more questions? Edwina on the chat said, is this the time when you clone your suite and rename for every build? I don't understand that question. So if you want to jump on the call, I don't understand what that means, what that question is. So Edwina, if you want to chat a little bit more. Okay, Lilia, you had your hand raised up. You have a question?
I have a question, like quick question. Can you open our website, Deans? It will be quicker to show you what is my question about.
Okay, let me get to. So that's my new share. Okay, Lilia, go ahead and instruct me on what I need to do.
Can you scroll down to feature trips, please? Right here. Yes, right here. And do you see the tags under the icon like Asian, Vietnamese, salad, modern Australian?
I do.
Our question was at the stand-up, should we, like in real life, should we create test case for each tag, or we can do it like one for all of them?
It would be one for all of them. These are tags. These are not functional. They don't make or break the software. I think it's more of a nice to have feature. Do you agree with me?
Yes, yes, I agree.
So if you were to create a test case and you say, oh, tag this as salad, tag this as Vietnamese. If you tag one, it works, right?
Okay.
That should be the test. That if you add a tag to a particular trip that's featured, you should be able to tag it. That's the test case right there, that you should be able to add tags. Doesn't matter if it's Vietnamese or whatnot. If it fails for the rest of them, and you treat them as a group.
Okay, it makes sense. Thank you, Chen. And one more question, Chen.
Sure.
Last week, Marina asked us about our emails for mobile project for QA5, and should we get any instructions, or like we can start working? I mean, QA5 can start working on mobile project, or you don't know about it?
I am not too familiar on it. You're more than welcome to post a Slack question to Marina. I know that she's very responsive, so I would rather her answer that, since that's what she directed you guys to do.
Okay.
Do you mind?
Thank you.
I don't want to give you incorrect instructions.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Chen.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got 10 more minutes. That's very rare. And do you guys have any questions here in the room, or any other?
Can we test a chair?
Excuse me?
Can we test a chair?
Dennis in the classroom wants us to test a chair, and I'm going to let him start.
I knew it would come.
Yeah.
It's I read it's a pretty common interview question when they ask you to test something they see. Like first thing they see, the chair, table, laptop, I don't know, TV or something.
Okay. Okay.
I have no idea where to start, honestly. It's just I haven't read spoilers. I want to see.
You're talking about asking a question on a particular item in the room?
Yeah, like any. I just thought about chairs.
What do you think?
Requirements.
Well, first of all, yeah, I need to know if it's the chair that we both know what it's supposed to do. So kind of gathering requirements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the, if chair is the normal chair that all people,
Mm-hmm.
Use with the same, for the same purpose. Okay, we know the requirements. So probably first requirement will be, it has to have some sort of, like stability, should be stable. I mean, there's, you see, it's something that we haven't practiced yet, kind of gathering the requirements and stuff.
Okay, if you don't have the requirements, what would you do?
I would sit on it. One of the first things.
I mean, I would ask first for, do you have any requirements?
That's what I asked.
Let's pretend. That's it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
You guys have to also remember, you guys have to remember what we started with the beginning of the course, the software development life cycle. You as a QA almost always never gather those requirements. You are practicing so that you know as a role what you as a product manager would ask of it, right? So let's just say we want you to be able to answer these questions, but you're going in for a QA position, right? But they're asking you during an interview, how would you test this chair? They're asking you as a QA, but then you remember what you learned in the software development lifecycle that you need to gather the requirements. Hopefully there are some requirements, but if you want me to go ahead and give it to you, I'm assuming this chair should be, stable. You just mentioned that. It sits upright. It's made of certain materials. You're giving the requirements, and based on that as a QA tester, I would test accordingly that this particular material allows me to sit. That these 4 chairs on the 4 legs actually hold up to 300 weight or so. You give the requirements because you're pretty smart. That's why you're a QA person.
And also we have a really good video with George. I'm not sure if they posted, but it's available for public in YouTube. And he described how to test the pencil. Pretty much the same strategy. Before actually anything to execute, you have to get as much as possible the information about the end user, basically requirements, right? Who is going to be using this chair? Is it going to be for kids? Obviously, that should be different measurement and sizes. Or is it going to be an office chair? Or is it going to be for home chair? Is it going to be a dinner, like for dinner table chair, right? So it's completely different perspective. So before actually start executing, and they can say, okay, let's test this chair, right? Which is office chair, right? So, but yeah, it's still not clear who is going to be using this chair. I mean, kind of clear.
Like maybe 100 pounds.
Yes, exactly. Like you need to come up with all these requirements by asking those type of questions. You don't go there, okay, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to break it down. I mean, no. But eventually you have to get as much information as possible for end user requirements, and then you have to break it down with the test suites actually. The smoke test. What would be the smoke test? Which is basically happy path, right? You just put your butt in the chair. If it's not breaking, pass.
It works.
It works, right? But at the same time, you can come up with performance testing, which would be load testing, which is actually to put as much weight as possible to this chair. Or like, what is the maximum weight this chair is supposed to handle or not, right? You don't want to break it as well right away.
Or if I'm gonna stand on it,
Yeah, like,
Is it a
Yeah,
standing
I need to
chair?
do something
Is
like-
it a standing chair? Will it hold my weight and all of that? So
And for the requirements will also cover the performance testing, like the non-functional
not
testing.
always.
Not always.
Not always.
So we should assume,
You should not assume. You should
Never
you have to-
assume.
Never assume.
okay, how?
Number
how-
one,
all right,
never
so
assume. You
say,
have
for
to
example,
get the
chair-
information first. Never assume.
But you say for non-functional testing, there's no requirements, or not always requirements for
I
non-functional
mean,
testing.
if there's no requirements, you
How
have
can
to
I
get
know
them.
what the maximum load this chair will have? I mean, unless I put something like 300 pounds.
Ask
in it,
the
like
question,
400
who is
500
asking you
pounds.
this? Asking this question to the interviewer.
Okay.
You,
But if
you cannot
don't-
assume, okay, you can say that, all right, you can ask them, what is the load? I mean, what is the expected load for this chair,
Okay.
the weight?
Okay.
And he said, I don't know. And then you have to out loud to show them your thought process. Okay, if you don't have requirements for the chair in terms of load, obviously there should be some, this chair is supposed to handle some load, right?
Yeah.
What's the maximum weight of the person could be potentially, right?
Okay.
And you just
If
show
they don't
them,
know this, if they don't know the maximum
yeah,
weight.
but you show them your common sense, you know? You
Mhm.
just don't put a truck on the chair. It just doesn't make any sense, right?
Mhm.
You can say, well, let's assume that the maximum load could be 200 pounds. I don't know.
You just, I mean, you just mentioned don't break the chair. So do anything it takes, don't break the chair. But what if the load, and you are not aware what the load can be?
Yeah, that's why you have
What
to
if
ask
you
the question.
break the chair while you're loading it? Like you actually loaded too much, you overloaded.
So this
It's
chair
broke.
didn't.
and
Plus-
that's your stress testing right there.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's
that's
your
what I'm saying.
performance.
So
But you're
if
gonna
they
make
don't give
that-
you the specific requirement. You
Right.
don't assume, right?
You don't
just,
assume.
You
You
just
have to
test it until it fails, or what's the
No,
boundary?
first of all, you have to get the requirements,
Mhm.
right? And if they don't know the requirements, let's say real world scenario. Do we have time? Like
Oh yeah, we have 3 more
3
minutes.
more minutes. Let's assume we have like similar in Toyota. Like they didn't have requirements for the load test. For the website, how many concurrent users can be on the website. But they got the analytics. So they went and they checked the analytics on the peak time, how many concurrent users were on particular hour, right? And they, let's say 600 users can be on particular hour. That's okay. Let's take this data. But this thought process, right? So the same thing with the chair. If the interviewer, if he can ask this question and he doesn't know the right answer about the requirements about the load testing, you can assume, okay, I can Google it, right? I can Google what is supposed to handle, what is the weight which is supposed to handle it, right?
Mhm.
If you don't know the answer right away, you can, okay, let's assume that it's say 200, 300 pounds,
Okay.
right? And then you have to come up with test cases based on that information, right? But again, you never assume, you don't say like, oh, let's put it 500 pounds, if it breaks, it's wonderful. No, you don't know because it's out of scope. It's also very, you should be clear what is in scope. And that's where you have to ask the questions. Like, do you know, like, he can say, let's test chair, and you go, okay, what is the scope? Who is going to be using this chair? You get much more, oh, do you want to do load tests or performance tests? Like, performance test is not only for like, for chair could be only with the load test, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Performance chair could be if it has wheels, you know, like how long you can drive on this chair, kind of really exaggerating things.
Okay.
So like just product requirements, when you ask them what are the requirements, they said, you know what, we built this chair only to hold up 200 pounds. But then you do the happy path, you do the testing, and then you start creating your test cases after the fact that all the happy path passed. And you're like, look, we need to make sure it only allows for 200 pounds because I just added 210 pounds, 230 pounds, 250. This is your test that you're creating in addition to the happy path that they were giving you the requirements. That stress test is you are communicating to the product like, look, we stress test this particular chair at 250 pounds and it's starting to get wobbly. You want to push it at 300 pounds, we'll add more stress to that load of that chair. At 300 pounds, it's broken. Like we cannot allow anybody over or at 300 pounds to be sitting on this chair. That's where you come in with all of these different test cases. After the happy path has gone, it's not detailed. It wasn't told to you, hey, test with 300 and make it break. They're not going to say that. They're just like, this allows for 200 pounds. But then you're thinking like, how about if a 300-pound person sits on it? Will it break? That's where you start creating your test cases. Your requirements are there, and then you think around it. Sounds good?
Yeah. And that's applicable to anything. That's applicable to anything.
All right, guys, it's 12:30. Elena asked, how about a 3,000-pound and a baby on his lap? I'm sure that will break. All right, everyone.
All right, see you
Have
guys.
a wonderful weekend. Find all the bugs that you can.
See you next week, guys.
See you guys next week. Have a good one. The meeting.